Hello, happy Friday. Um, I don't know. I didn't send an event or plan an event on my Facebook page about this because I just decided at the last minute that the week got away from me and I've been getting a few emails. So I thought it would be a good idea to jump on a Facebook Live to answer some questions. Hopefully, people are around. And if they're not, so far nobody's signed on or caught this. But if nobody shows up, that's fine because I can answer a few questions that I've gotten via email. And I can't, boy, I can tell you, I'm getting a lot of emails, and I definitely don't have the bandwidth to answer them individually. So I'm going to try to do them this way for now. Okay, so let's start with, and again, the emails I'm getting are from parents who definitely are interested in homeschooling because they're not happy with, or they haven't heard their school district's plans for COVID. So this is like annoying me. Mirror image. Oh, sorry. Okay, and I didn't realize this is, I actually apologize for this, but when, so I've been helping people understand the homeschool law for, really as long as I've been doing it, and I haven't in the past couple of years just because my children are grown and I haven't had homeschoolers for at least 2 or 3 years. My youngest just graduated from the local school district, the public school, and that was a good fit for him. So I have backed off in the past couple of years, but you forget, or I forget that diving into this, it's basically, I don't know what I know. So I just assume that people are comfortable with really even the basic steps. And now I realize that that's not the case, that you really haven't had time to research this. You don't really even know where to start. And to be honest with you, it might seem unbelievable that a parent doesn't have to have special credentials to homeschool. So I guess it makes sense to dial all the way back. Some of you will be familiar with the basic steps to begin homeschooling, and some of you won't. So I'll try to dial it back to the very, very beginning. The other thing I wanted to note is that I did write the ebook. It's called Homeschooling in Pennsylvania, How to Comply with the Law in 8 Easy Steps. And that is used to be on Amazon, and it used to be available through my website. But since I haven't had time to update it since the compulsory attendance age changed, which I think it changed in 2019, early in 2019, and then there was this interim period where it didn't apply to students in the school year for 2019 and 2020. It goes into effect for the 6-year-olds who will be 6 by September 1st for this school year. And I didn't want to change it twice. Because it has caused so much confusion traditionally, even before it changed. So I still have to update that, and that's why it's not available on the website. But it's a shame because that does provide a pretty good step-by-step plan. All right, so I think let's assume that you're a parent who would prefer traditional school, either private or public, but you're freaked out by this COVID stuff. So you are saying to yourself, I'm going to do it on my own. All right, so you've made that decision. The first thing to consider is whether you meet the minimum qualifications, which are, number one, that you're a custodial parent or legal guardian. Number two, and it doesn't have to be full-time custody, as long as your custody agreement would allow for that, or your informal agreement, but you have to be considered a custodial parent in Pennsylvania. Number 2, that you earned a high school diploma or its equivalent. So that could be a GED, that could be satisfying the homeschool laws in a different state, or Pennsylvania. So that's the equivalent of a high school diploma. It's important to note that you do not have to file a copy of your high school diploma. You just have to attest on the affidavit that you've earned a high school diploma or its equivalent. And number 3, that you or any adult living in your home has not been convicted of one of the crimes enumerated, and I think they're in the public school code. It's like Section E or Section 111 of subsection E, I'm not sure exactly. And there's a whole list of crimes that you or an adult living in your home has not been convicted of those within 5 years, looking back, of filing the affidavit. So, so those are the minimum requirements. And you can find the list of those on my website, pahomeschoollaw.com. If you go to the top menu bar, under resources, there should be the text of the law. And I think if you scroll down, they're listed there. So if you meet those minimum requirements, you have the right to educate your child at home in Pennsylvania. So then the next thing you do is you want to fill out an affidavit, and you can find a form. I put a link in to the form that I created and I recommend on the page. If you scroll down on this Pennsylvania Homeschool Law Facebook page, you can find a link to the form that I recommend because it's simple, it's straightforward, it meets all the elements that are required under the law, and it doesn't have extraneous language. A lot of the forms that the Pennsylvania Department of Education publishes, and then because of that, a lot of the school districts just have adopted that form, and they would be available on their website, are like 3 pages long, and they have extra language that isn't required. So you can use those forms, but I think it can be simpler than that. So go to either my site. The form I created is also available on the Pennsylvania Homeschool Support Facebook group, another great resource. So I would encourage you to join that group, and you have to request to join, but they're super helpful in there, super active in there. As you can see, I'm not that active on this page, and you can find it in their files as well. Excuse me. So you get the form, download it, and it's pretty straightforward to fill that out. You include, I can go over the elements, but it's pretty self-explanatory. One thing to note is that the affidavit does not have to include birth dates. You just have to identify like the name and age of the children who will be in the home education program. So that will be any of your children over the age of 6 and over, 6 to 18. So you fill that out, but you have to have it notarized. So find a notary, and once it's notarized, you can attach a proposed list of objectives, which again, I have available in the same download as the affidavit. I always recommend very general objectives. I honestly don't even know why it's a requirement. It's just basically saying for each of the levels, there's elementary level and then secondary level, you're going to cover certain subjects. So, and here's the other thing, is you don't even have to cover every subject every year. So just keep that in mind. But you'll see that the objectives that I list are very general, but they probably are even more detailed than some other people file. So that's basically what you send to the school district. There is an extra step if you have a child who has been identified as having special needs. So let's say they had an IEP in the school district or some other, maybe they were before school age, they had special services, you had them tested. But if they've been, I'm not an expert in this, but let's say they have received some sort of state service. The extra step is that you have to have the education plan approved by either a teacher who's certified to teach special needs, I think a school psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and there might be a couple of other categories of people. There's an article about that. It's in the law, but there's an article about that, I think, on the website. And again, I haven't looked at that language for a long time, so I don't know in particular the specific language. But just keep that in mind. Before you send it to the school district, you need to have the education plan approved just for the child who has special needs. Okay, so you have your packet together. And all you do is send it to the superintendent of the school district. I recommend, and most people suggest, that you send it certified mail, return receipt requested. Send it off. I'd make a copy for yourself because sometimes they get misplaced. It's not your fault. Doesn't mean your homeschool is invalid. But it's just nice to have a copy of what you mail. Oh, and then the other thing is you should, if you don't claim an exemption, either a medical or a religious exemption to health services or immunizations, which if your children have been in school, you have or you haven't, you should, if the school already doesn't have a list of immunizations to date, and they probably, if your kid has been in school for a couple of years, they have a record of the health services up to that point. There's an article on my website about the health services requirements, and at the bottom of that post, there's a chart about what's required in certain grades. So either include, and like I said, your school probably has a list of the immunizations on record already, so you can even maybe note that. Now, up until about 2 years ago, the affidavit was sufficient evidence that the health service requirements were met. But there was a health and safety law, I think, that changed a couple of years ago that required schools to have those on file, actually the immunization records on file for every student in the district, including home educated students. So it's a tension between two laws that probably is not going to be resolved by litigation or legislation. So it comes up every year. Just be aware of that. So however you want to handle it, however you have handled it, try that. I recommend just attaching a list of immunizations if you don't object, either on a health basis or a religious or moral exemption, which has to be in writing, either one of those. So, okay. So attach that. You have your packet. You mail it off to the school. Return receipt requested. I would send it just on your district website. Find where the superintendent's office is. It's probably at the main office of the high school. And address it to the superintendent. And you're good to go. They'll say that they received it. I had a question about when to do that. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Allergies. When to do it? Okay, that's a good question. You should definitely do it. You can do it anytime basically after July 1st. So now is a good time if you definitely know you're going to homeschool, because you can start counting days. But you should definitely do it within 3 days of your district's start date, because there's a truancy law that if there are more than 3 unexcused absences, the school has to take some sort of notice action or something like that, just to avoid a truancy violation. Somebody also asked whether they should expect something in return from the school district or the state. You won't get anything from the state once you file your paperwork. Most school districts do acknowledge receipt. They also might send a letter. Here's the thing. The letter that I used to get, and I think my friends still get it from my local school district, has information. So once they acknowledge receipt of the homeschool, the affidavit, they'll kind of give you suggestions. Oh, don't forget the evaluation or certifications. Evaluator certification is due by June 30th of the following year, 2021. And then it's not unusual for schools to ask for more than is required. So a lot of times they even jumble the private tutor law. Like there's an option to, if you're a Pennsylvania certified teacher, there's an option to file under that provision of the law, and has different requirements. And at least the letter that I used to get kind of jumbled the requirements. So just be aware of that, and just review the law. And some school districts probably don't acknowledge receipt, but usually I think they do, because there's usually some sort of administrative person who is in charge of maintaining the paperwork, and I think at least they want to give you notice of who that would be if you have any questions or problems. Now, the other question is, do you have to formally withdraw your child? You don't under the Pennsylvania homeschool law, but again, there's probably some district or state requirement that the districts have to, just for enrollment purposes, funding purposes, have to keep an accurate accounting of how many kids are they're responsible for. So it's usually a simple form, and it's super basic. So, we were talking about timing. And I covered that. Do it within 3 days, and it probably is not going to be, if you're a continuing homeschool student, so that it would be your second year or your student's second year, that is due by August 1st. But that's probably not going to apply to anybody in this group. So I'm going to look at my notes, because I am so sorry about this weird allergy thing. I should have brought some water, but I didn't. Okay, so that's what you need to get started. And I'm going to check out. I don't think. Amy posted something, but I don't think she has a question. Maybe she's just notifying somebody else about this live broadcast. So then one person asked, once I file all that, and again, it's really that easy. And the affidavit takes about 10 minutes at the most to fill out. You'll have it'll take longer to find a notary and get yourself to the notary. I think there are 2 videos on my YouTube channel, the PA Homeschool Law YouTube channel, that walks you through the elements of an affidavit and like how to fill out an affidavit in 10 minutes. So it's pretty easy. But anyway, I guess somebody found either this page or my website and sent an email and was wondering what else to do to get going. Very good question, but it's a pretty broad question because it's basically you decide what your schedule will be. Doesn't have to be extensive. Homeschooling can be super efficient. Your lessons don't have to be an hour. Let's say, and I would keep it really basic for this first year while you get used to the rhythm of this and what will really work for you and your family. Okay, Johanna, that's a pretty name if I'm pronouncing it correctly, has a question. I'll get to that in 1 second. But to get started, you just kind of decide what subjects you want to cover and when. A schedule. A lot of people, do reading, English, math every day, and then any other subject a day or 2 a week. And again, not every subject gets covered every year. So I'll give you an example. For the elementary level, and maybe for the secondary level, again, I haven't looked at this for so long. For the elementary level, Pennsylvania history is required, but it's not required every year. And my kids did spend some time in public school, and usually it's covered like once for each level. So once during the elementary years, like some schools would have a Pennsylvania history project in 4th grade. Same with secondary. But here's the thing. Pennsylvania is so rich in history, American history, that it's nearly impossible to talk about history, and Pennsylvania doesn't have a part of it. So just to let you know. So what to do is just to kind of very basically decide what you want to cover, how best you think your student will learn the content. It could be children's books, it could be videos, it could be, curriculum that you want to purchase that is specifically for that content. The unfortunate thing now is that libraries are closed, because that would be such a good resource. At least our local library, you can order books online or call them, and they have curbside pickup. So, but I would encourage you for sure to, if you come across a resource, at least try that first so you're not spending tons of money. Maybe some local homeschool groups you can borrow or share or buy used resources, but I just wouldn't spend a ton of money. Khan Academy, I think it's KJN Academy, has a lot of resources online. It's a free, and they have just different subjects I haven't looked at. They're a website for a while, but it keeps growing. So anyway, that's where you start. And I don't want to get into, because it's getting kind of late, and I don't want to get into the other requirements like keeping a log, creating a portfolio with samples of your students' work, or the evaluation, because we could be here for hours talking about that. But just there's I reposted an infographic that somebody else reminded me of, and it's just a basic timeline of once you file, just generally in your mind, kind of gives you a time guideline, like what you should be sort of doing in the fall as far as thinking about collecting samples. You don't need a lot of samples. of work for the portfolio. And this other person wanted to know what an evaluation is like. It's not that extensive. Depends on the evaluator, and a lot of you might be able to just ask your students, your kids' teachers, if they'd be interested in doing an evaluation. That might not be the best because they don't really understand the homeschool law requirements, but I don't want to get into all that right now. We can save that for a different separate, because they all have their separate issues that pop up. And I don't want this to go too long because I have some stuff to do today. But let me answer Johanna. And I don't know if you can see everybody's questions. Some people have their privacy settings so they aren't published. But she asks how to use an IEP that was from my child's online school. So you can use it verbatim and kind of go along with the same plan, but that's a little awkward at home because things are going to be different. But basically just use it as a guideline. You're not required even to use it as a guideline, but when parents have worked with to create that, it makes sense to use it as a guideline. So yeah, and honestly, that's not really my expertise either. I know there are some homeschool parents in the Pennsylvania Homeschool Support Group that have a lot of more experience creating education plans that have to be approved, and where do they find. You can find somebody online who meets the requirements and just like shoot off a copy of your plan and do it that way. It doesn't have to be in person. I did one of these. It's on this page with I forget her name, but we talked about testing because she's an educator and she helps parents, but I think she also approves home education plans for kids with special needs. So she would be a really good resource. You're welcome. So here's what you should do is, she even has a business. So go back, scroll up on the this page, and find the testing, or it's on YouTube, the Facebook Live I did with another person. I feel so bad that I don't remember her name, but something Coach Stout. And just, you should be able to get her information and either go to her website directly and ask if you need an evaluator. If you can't find one, to somebody to approve your plan, and then just use her as a resource. And she's super generous. She used to be with her time, but she also might have grown kids and isn't as involved, so I'm not sure. All right, I think that's it for today. I'm hoping these are helpful. I'm toying with the problem with trying to do this really efficiently, but I feel bad that I can't answer people's questions individually. I just don't have time to do that by email. I was wondering if I could do some sort of Zoom call, like a webinar that for 90 minutes, and you pay, I don't know, $25 for the 90 minutes, just to be able to ask your personal questions. I know people are feeling overwhelmed and a little bit under the gun, and I just am trying to do this efficiently. I considered doing a private Facebook group, but just even setting that up was getting nutty for me. I spent like an hour one morning trying to figure out why the link didn't work to it. And I thought, I don't want to try to approve everybody coming in. And that just wasn't working out. But I don't know. If you're interested or think that you need more personal attention, I mean, you can set up a personal consultation I charge a fee for that, but most people probably aren't interested in that. I'm just trying to do this efficiently. So anyway, hopefully this will help, and I'll jump on, and probably maybe it'll work out. If I get a group of questions, then I'll jump on once or twice a week and record one of these. And you guys can get on and ask questions while I'm live. So anyway, I think that's it for today. Have a great weekend, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. I think it takes a day. I am able to upload this, so this will be in recorded form on the page. But for people who don't have Facebook, I try to put them on YouTube. So, but I think I have to wait a day. For some reason, YouTube doesn't accept it right away. So yeah, so and then I'll post the link of it if you want to share it with friends, because I know there are a lot of people who are in this situation. All right, have a good day, everyone. Thank you.